Welcome back to the Tracy Take. Today, Ryan and I, we are continuing our NFL free agency recap with the NFC East, starting off with the Washington Commanders. But before we do that, Ryan and I, we have a goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers, and we are only 42 away as of filming this right now. So if you have not already, hit that subscribe button. Help us reach our goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers by the NFL draft. And if you're watching this video and we've already hit it, still subscribe and help us reach our next goal of getting to 2,000 subscribers. That would be very helpful. So we appreciate it. And that being said, Ryan, let's get into it. The Commanders have kind of had a low-key, just a low-key run-of-the-mill free agency. I'd feel like they lost a quarterback, and then they signed a quarterback. They have now found a new offensive coordinator for their offense. They have added a right tackle, help bolstering up that offensive line after they have lost some offensive line pieces. And so they're kind of, I feel like, staying status quo here. And we were even talking a little bit about that, about their QB situation, which we're going to get into here in a second. But let's just go into kind of who has departed off of Washington. What were some of their key losses?
So the big one, probably the most newsworthy one, I wouldn't say the big one, the cutting of Carson Wentz, and then the loss of Taylor Heinecke, so losing two quarterbacks out of that QB room. Cole Holcomb, the linebacker, went to the Steelers, and then Wes Schweitzer, the center, and then Bobby McCain and Cam Sims, who are a couple rotational pieces, as well as Wes Martin, the left guard. So a couple rotational pieces. A few guys that are not signed yet are J.D. McKissick, Trey Turner, and then John Bostic, the linebacker of note, and then Nick Martin, the center. So a few guys haven't been signed to contracts yet by other teams, but so far, kind of what you said, not a whole lot of major losses. Taylor Heineke is probably the big one, and then Cole Holcomb second to that.
I would actually say Heineke probably is, because he, over these past couple of years, I mean, he made his rise in Washington, but I think he just hit his ceiling. And if Washington was wanting to make a deeper run, I think it was time to turn a new page. And it's kind of one of the things leading into our edition. They signed Jacoby Brissett from Cleveland, who I think is kind of similar. I'd say fairly similar, I think, to Taylor Heineke, maybe a little bit better. But it seems like they're going to be rolling with Sam Howell as their first quarterback, and what we've seen from comments from other Washington videos is that's kind of what the fan base kind of wants to see. And so I'm very curious to see what Sam Howell is going to bring to the table. And if he doesn't pan out, like let's say he just 5 games and he's just not the guy, then you always bring in Jacoby Brissett, who could still potentially make a playoff run. And we talked about it before, but it reminds me of what the Falcons are doing right now, who just signed Taylor Heineke. They're going to roll with Desmond Ridder. Let's see how the season goes. And if he really stinks it up, let's go with Taylor Heineke, and maybe we can still make a playoff push. So kind of just that QB carousel type ordeal that's going on, trying to find the next franchise quarterback, because let's say they suck this year, then they're going to have a top 10 pick next year.
Who was it Josh McCown? Was that the quarterback that seemed to change teams every year and was the perennial backup? And now I think he's a QB's coach in the NFL now. I think it's Josh McCown. And to me, that's Jacoby Brissett is this generation's Josh McCown, right? He's just going from team to team, making $8 million this season to be a solid backup quarterback, potentially coach a younger quarterback, and if needed, play a couple games, right? And that to me is what Jacoby Brissett is, and he's really good at that, right? He can come in and he can be a wild card contending quarterback.
Yeah.
And so,
and that's what at the Browns, I think some people forget. I mean, him and Amari Cooper had a good connection, and Amari Cooper is also one of the better receivers in the league. And you look at this team right now. I mean, led by Terry McLaurin, and then Jahan Dotson's has really come on strong. And I think having a more consistent quarterback presence is going to be better for Jahan Dotson in that offense. To have an even better receiver 1-2 tandem. And you still have Curtis Samuel, then Brian Robinson's coming back in the backfield. If Sam Howell doesn't pan out, you can make an argument that I think that Jacoby Brissett might be in the same situation offensively as what he was with Cleveland, except maybe he might have more receiver weapons.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't say he would have the elite level of Amari Cooper, but he would have a wider variety of solid options. And
Yeah.
so I do like him in this offense. I think you know where your ceiling is with him. Again, I think he is a wild card contending level quarterback. Nothing more, usually not less. He has a bad
Yeah.
game every now and then, but yeah. And then to me, we haven't even actually addressed their biggest signing of the offseason. And to me, well, it was a re-signing, but that's Daron Payne.
Yeah. I was just
And
about to bring that up.
and so, I mean, he's one of the best defensive linemen in the league. They reset the defensive tackle market with his contract, and very well deservedly so.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, that whole defensive front, and if I'm not even mistaken, Chase Young didn't even play that much last year, right?
I think he only played the last 2 games, and he was a rotational guy, if that.
Yeah. So having him back, and then once when Chase Young gets healthy, and then I'm blanking on who is
Jonathan Allen.
That's it. I don't know why I was blanking on that. I mean, that front four of guys is ridiculous.
I remember
it's still ridiculous
when they drafted Jonathan Allen, because he came the year after Daron Payne. And it's like you look at it, and it's okay. So they have 2 elite defensive tackles, and then you had Chase Young in that mix, who was defensive rookie of the year in his class by a long shot. Like one of the best edge rushing prospects we've really seen in the last 10 years or so, if not further back. And this defensive front is amazing. So
yeah,
this team has a lot of potential. They just happen to be in possibly the most competitive division in football.
It's great. It's very possible. It's very possible that we could see this be the first time.
All 4 teams.
Yeah, all 4 teams make it, because offensively going back, and then we'll finish up with the notable additions here after this. But signing now Eric Bieniemy to the offensive coordinator position, very curious on what he can bring to the table, because there's obviously he has been in the news for a very long time over these past couple of years during this head coaching carousel, but stayed in Kansas City. Now it seems like Andy Reid mainly did the play calling. Now he's going to have full reins of the play calling because Ron Rivera is a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. So very curious to see if just frankly how this offense does. What was all the hype saying like he needs a head coaching job? Is he going to deliver? I hope he does, because I think he helped contribute a lot within that Kansas City offense, and he learned a lot under Andy Reid. He can apply those principles. But then this offense, I mean, sky's the limit with the offense here if they can have the right pieces. So it'll be very interesting with that offense. A couple other noticeable additions. Cody Barton, linebacker. I think it's also going to help out that defense, help out that front 7 here. Abdullah Anderson from the Falcons, some more defensive tackle depth. And then also Trent Scott, right tackle from the Steelers. Just add some more offensive line depth. And
well, you didn't even mention, to me, the 2 biggest ones.
Oh, shoot. Oh, I thought we already talked about Andrew Wiley.
No, we didn't talk about Andrew Wiley or Nick Gates, the center.
Oh, okay, yeah. Go ahead.
So both of those guys, Andrew Wiley was the weak link on that Chiefs offensive line last year. However, he held up really well in the Super Bowl. Part of that, I give credit to the turf. But I think that's just a solid signing for whoever's back under center. And then Nick Gates, also a good center last season. They paid him $5.5 million, which is a pretty reasonable contract for a good starting center. So to me, I really like that. You look at Brian Robinson back there. J.D. McKissick is a free agent, but then they still have Antonio Gibson. And I think that offensive line is on the up and up. At 16, I think they might be in a good position to invest in a left tackle.
Yeah.
And that can kind of carry us over into the next part of our conversation here. But I like what they did in free agency. I think they either replaced or slightly improved at a lot of the positions that they lost. And then they set themselves up well in the draft to be able to go in and select best player available.
Yeah, because that to me, I agree completely. It's like what we said at the beginning. It's like Taylor Heinecke left, they get Jacoby Brissett. So they're replacing him essentially for similar cost, I would say.
Yeah.
And now with where they're at in the draft, maybe if a Broderick Jones falls, maybe you can draft him. But I feel like they're going to be kind of in that slot of corner potentially as well. Yeah, I think that is also a need for them. Joey Porter, maybe Deontay Banks, or maybe if Keely Ringo like really flies up some boards for some reason, and like
Well, maybe in the second, if they like Keely Ringo there, they could
that's true.
move up early in the second and take him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that to me, I think is if there's still a weakness, I think on that team, I think it would be on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary side of the ball, because they haven't really addressed too much. They did get Cam Dantzler, him off waivers from the Vikings, but I still think that there's some improvement in the secondary department as well.
No, yeah, I agree. Specifically with that 16th pick, I think you're in that same realm with kind of those like middle teen teams, the middle first round, where you're probably going to miss out on the big 3 offensive tackles. It's probably too early to dip into the next 3 offensive tackles.
Yeah.
And then then you're kind of in this limbo spot. Like, do you trade up to get a tackle? Do you trade back to get a tackle? Do you pick at 16 where you are? And I think they're just in the best player available. I don't think the one spot I don't think they really need any players is the defensive line. I really could realistically see them going with a linebacker if they love one.
Yeah.
At 16. The only one I think that would even really be remotely close to worth it would be Jack Campbell.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of in an interesting spot. So another route I think they could go would be tight end. They don't really have an elite tight end threat on their roster. I think Logan Thomas is the current one that they have, and he's your big body blocking tight end, right? Like the inline.
Yeah, let me double check that right here. Yeah, because I think it is. Yeah, it's Logan Thomas, but shoot, how old is Logan Thomas now, though? Is
28?
it? He's 31.
Oh, 31.
Yeah, so,
wow.
Yeah. So he's getting up there, and he has had some injury histories as well. So
yeah.
I think maybe getting a little younger there, except looks like they have a bunch of tight ends on the position already. So that's what's interesting. I think it just kind of goes back to say it's like there's so many different ways that Washington could go here. And if they're going to roll with Sam Howell and they sign Jacoby Brissett, I don't think that they will trade up for a quarterback here, because I think that with how everything's going on up by the top 5, it seems like one quarterback might fall if the Raiders don't get him, and I don't know if they'll go after a Will Levis or an Anthony Richardson if they fall.
No,
maybe if they come to him, maybe they'll take it.
Yeah.
Just have some more competition.
Yeah. No, I mean, at this point in the draft, especially with the amount of Will Levis hype that we've heard come from around the organization and the fan base, I think they'd be hard pressed to really trade up and draft a Will Levis, especially kind of like what you said at the beginning of the video, and we'll kind of end on this. But if they play Sam Howell and he sucks, they'll be able to dip into an even better quarterback class next year.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of I guess another point in the column of don't trade up for a quarterback this year.
Yeah. Especially with all these question marks. Well, even now, of course, it's a year away. It's not as many question marks already, just to kind of from what we've seen from these guys. But there's still a lot to I think they've had a good offseason so far. Very curious to see what they do on draft night.